What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video where today we're taking a look at Dragons Dogma 2 on an RTX 4090 Ryzen 7800X 3D 32 gigs of DDR5 6000 MHz C30 memory. We're going to take a look at a few of the different settings here and test a few different things, mostly focused on performance. But before we do that, let's take a look at the graphics. And we're going to be running the game on a 3440 by 1440 ultra-wide display, 175 Hz QD OLED Alienware. We're going to begin with essentially all the settings maxed out, and we'll go through them right now. Ray tracing is on, TAA for anti-aliasing, and the only thing I've essentially turned off is lens flare, lens distortion. That's about it. So without further ado, let's take a look at the game. Okay, so this is the very beginning of the game. I've only played for about a half an hour or so. I am not some Dragons Dogma pro or anything like that, although I did play the first one recently a little bit, maybe like 6-7 hours or so in preparation for the sequel. So I do know a little bit of what's going on, like I understand the pawn system and how it works. But before we get into all that, let's take a look at the core utilization. Now, I am well aware that this game runs a little bit rough in the main city, and I'm going to try to squeeze that into this video. But for now, we can take a look at the core utilization, and it looks okay. I mean, we have some cores and threads higher than the others, which is pretty normal for pretty much all modern games these days. I haven't seen a game that evenly spreads the load across all the cores, but this is kind of what we have. And with all the settings maxed out with the RTX 4090, we are actually able to maintain a 60 FPS experience, at least in the open world area here. I haven't really run into any CPU bottlenecks or anything like that. For the most part, the performance has been pretty good. Speaking of performance, we actually do have access to FSR and DLSS Super Resolution, and normally you would use those. But in this game, their implementation is actually not very good, especially DLSS. I think it's not that good. So I'll put together a little comparison. Let's take a look. Before we take a look at DLSS and FSR though, I just wanted to take a look at the ray tracing here and see how much performance we can gain back by turning it off, and also see if there's any visual differences. So we're going to be focusing here on this image overlooking down this valley, and right now we're getting around 65 FPS consistently. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn ray tracing off and see how much more performance we can gain back. But by turning ray tracing off, you can definitely notice a bit of a difference. I feel with ray tracing enabled, the shadows and the lighting looks overall more realistic. But by turning ray tracing off, we're able to claw back 20% performance. So we went from 65 to around 75, 76. That's a pretty decent jump. And this is also using an RTX 4090. I would assume that a less capable ray tracing GPU, the hit to performance would probably be a little bit more than just 20%. But that is a nice chunk of performance you can claw back by just turning ray tracing off. Here we have ray tracing on the left and ray tracing off on the right. You can clearly tell that the global illumination with ray tracing looks noticeably better in my opinion. However, there's a bit of a performance cost to it. And this cliffside here is probably my favorite because you can clearly tell that the light looks more realistic, and with the dynamic time of day, this does add to the immersion, I feel. But it is a good way to gain some performance back if you had to. If we go back to ray tracing off, we were essentially able to gain an extra 20% of performance by turning ray tracing off. Now there is another setting we can mess with to gain an extra 10-11% as well. And that would be turning shadow quality from max to high. Only thing is that once you go from max to high, the shadows do look a little bit more flickery. And that's something I personally find annoying, but maybe to others it might not matter. So if you look at the bushes there, you can see all the shadows are flickering a bit, but we went from 75 FPS to 82 FPS. Now dropping shadow quality even to low, you're not going to gain any more performance, and it's going to look considerably worse. As you can see, it looks terrible. And we only went from like 83 FPS to 85, so it's not really worth it. I think from max to high, there is meaningful performance gain where you could possibly tolerate slightly flickier shadows, but that it's personal preference at the end of the day, and if you need the performance. And here's a side-by-side look with max shadows on the left and high shadows on the right. You can clearly notice the flicker, and like I said, I find that bothersome, but to some it might not matter. So those are two settings you can mess with to gain more performance. But I wanted to focus on DLSS, and we're also going to take a look at FSR briefly, just to show you how unimpressive the image quality is. Actually, I think they really got this wrong. But we're back on ray tracing enabled here, maxed out settings, and we're going to turn on DLSS quality and pay close attention to the foliage, especially trees in the back, but even the grass up front here. With DLSS set to quality, you can notice that it's noticeably blurrier, and in my opinion, it doesn't look good at all. I personally don't really like it. And then if you go from DLSS quality to balance right now, it becomes even worse. Now don't worry, we are going to take a look at DLSS during gameplay as well, but this is just something I wanted to show you because I can compare it head to head a lot easier by presenting the same exact location for you guys. Let's go back to ray tracing native resolution. We're going to take a look at FSR because I think FSR actually does a slightly better job. At least it's not as blurry looking or as soft looking, but it does introduce flicker, which is another thing I find annoying, but I think it might actually look better than DLSS in this case, but the flicker kind of sucks. Anyway, let's check out FSR quality right now. And here we are with FSR set to quality. If you look at the grass moving, swaying back and forth, you do notice a bit more flicker, but I think it's more, it's sharper looking, it's more defined looking than DLSS quality does. And then if we take a look at FSR balance, it doesn't look great, but I mean, balance, FSR, even DLSS below 4K, it doesn't look great anyway, but especially in this game, I would not use it personally, but to each their own. I'll leave you here with a very quick comparison between native on the left, DLSS quality in the middle, and FSR quality on the right. And then later on, we're going to check these during gameplay as well, and then take a look at the city as well, because it is kind of a mess. I've never been to this part of the world now, and we're going to make our way to the village. So we're taking a look at the performance here, and we seem to be stuck at around 60 or so FPS. So yeah, the game is quite a bit demanding, obviously. I mean, we are using what is, you know, the most powerful GPU, and we're between 4K and 1440p, and we're between 60 and 70 FPS. So yeah, the game is demanding. But it does look nice. It does look very nice. Get out of here, you... Oh, we got him. That's an easy way to kill them. Just throw them off the cliff. Uh-oh. Ambush. Jesus, I'm getting destroyed. I got completely annihilated. Holy cow. Wow. That was an ambush. That's how an ambush is supposed to be. You die. Let's give this another go. Although, now I'm going to be prepared for it. My god, I'm not doing much damage to these guys. Alright. I wish there was a lock-on type of system. The guy kicked me while I was down! What an asshole. Well, that ambush didn't work out this time, did it? Take that. So I take it that's where the village is that we're supposed to go to. Why don't we try turning on some DLSS quality and check the performance out. Go with DLSS quality here. I kind of wish they had added DLSS 3 frame generation here as well. I think that would have been really cool. So now we're at 120 FPS, but I can notice that the image is a little softer. That just doesn't seem right, because in no other game I can notice that. There's sometimes a bit of ghosting in some games, there can be, but normally DLSS does a really good job at reconstructing the image, so I'm not sure why. I mean, this is almost like it's DLSS 1 or something. What the heck is going on? Like, look at the grass here. It almost looks like it's a bit ghosty. See, this is with DLSS off. This is with DLSS set to quality. DLSS off. DLSS quality. Yeah, that doesn't look very good. It's kind of a shame that this is the first time DLSS shows up in a game with the RE engine and it looks like this. You know, I was expecting it to be much better because FSR looks all right, and then checkerboard rendering doesn't look very good on consoles either on the RE engine. So I don't know, maybe it's something engine related. I don't know, but I hope they get it resolved because we know DLSS can look much better than this. But anyway, I think this video's gotten long enough. We're gonna go right to the city part of the game and check out the CPU bottlenecks and the performance there. I think we've determined that it works fine in the open world. Alrighty, so we've arrived at the main city of Vernworth. As a matter of fact, take a look at the map here. There it is. We're about to enter it right now. And I've gone back and set my settings all the way up again. And we'll go in there and see what's going on. So, ray tracing's enabled, all that stuff. Basically, shadow quality is on max. And let's see. So far, so good. Okay, we got a little bit of a hitch as we enter the gate. And I'm going to look at the frame time graph, and it's getting a little bit shaky. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely CPU limited. We're dipping well below 99%. So that is quite interesting. I'm actually curious to check this out on my 7900 XTX and see if it behaves a little bit better maybe. But yeah, this is not good. Not good at all. Well, we are going to try turning ray tracing off because that can add load to the CPU as well, obviously. Although it didn't do that really before when we weren't in the city. But one thing I can't help but wonder and think about is the fact that on the previous Dragons Dogma, right, you have a big giant city in there as well. And there's quite a good amount of NPCs running around. I mean, Capcom's statement regarding the heavy CPU use is due to the amount of people, although I don't really see that. It's not a huge amount of people in here. I mean, let's be honest. The Witcher 3 has way more people in their city than this game does. I would say there's about the same amount of people as there was in the first game. So I don't know what's going on, but I think there's a bit more going on here than what Capcom is letting on. But regardless, I hope they can fix it, whatever they have to do, because yeah, this is quite bad. Now, the good thing is that as far as I'm aware, you don't really fight in the main city and the villages seem to be okay. So while it is distracting and doesn't feel good, at least the game seems to run okay when you're out in the world adventuring and fighting and exploring. So that's good, I guess. But yeah, this is quite bad. It's not great. But before we wrap up the video, why don't we try turning ray tracing off and see if it alleviates some of the CPU bottleneck, because usually ray tracing is a bit demanding on the CPU as it does some of the calculation required. So let's take a look at that and then we'll wrap it up. Alright, so I had to go through an event and then all of a sudden it became dark outside, but we're still in the city and I've gone ahead and turned ray tracing off. I'll show you here in the settings real quick. And everything else is maxed out. Native resolution, and there we go, ray tracing is off. And I don't know, like it I mean, maybe the frame time is a bit smoother. We are CPU bound. Obviously, we're dropping well below 99%, sometimes into the 80s, sometimes even into the 70s. And it seems like when you enter some of these areas, it's almost like it's loading it. I'm not really sure. I think maybe it's just a placebo. I think the frame time is better because normally the CPU does play a role when you enable ray tracing. It's still problematic. It's not noticeable. Capcom still needs to fix it. So as a matter of fact, I'll show you. What we'll do is we'll turn DLSS and set it to ultra performance, right? And it's going to be right there, ultra performance or FSR, whatever. It doesn't matter. Same thing, right? We still have the same FPS, same type of frame times, and GPU use went way down because we're rendering from a much lower resolution. I hope Capcom can fix this. Good thing is, I guess, that it's only the big city and the open world where 99% of the gameplay will take place. It seems to be alright, at least somewhat acceptable. But anyway, guys, that'll be it. The video's gone way too long. Please like the video if you liked it and subscribe for more content. The liking does help out a lot, and thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one. I'll be taking a look at the other hardware I have in this game and Horizon Forbidden West as well, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Bye-bye.